Back in February of this year, a wildlife camera snapped an eerie figure dubbed an elemental with glowing eyes protruding from the dark of a forest. Now this haunting creature was picked up on a camera set up in the woods. But it wasn't meant to capture horror beings of any sinister variety. These cameras scattered in the woods were intentionally supposed to just pick up deer tracks. People wanted to monitor things. Instead, they got this beast. With glowing eyes and a hunched over appearance, the grim creature appears to have set off the movement tracker on the camera and offered up an unsettling selfie, if you will, which was posted to Facebook. The image in question, uploaded to Facebook group Ghosts of London, had some users alleging the find was maybe an elemental. Maybe a ghost. Both serve similar purposes, but the elemental seen here may have ties to the occult. And by that, a lot of folks think it might have been a sighting of a skin wearer. One user wrote, "That, my friends, is an elemental, a being comprised only of the energies of the earth itself." A couple of other commenters chimed in, agreed with the assessment of the eerie find. The original poster wrote, "This is a camera set up in the woods, set up to take photos when it senses movement. Main purpose? Take photos of deer and other wildlife. There are no people that could be in the woods at that time, especially without these folks knowing, and it had to be moving to set the camera off." Further freaked out Facebook users weighed in on the sighting. One said it was the eyes that chill me, and another worried for the pairs of eyes behind the elemental creature. Other folks suggested the sighting could be a W-worded being, which just so happens to be a shape-shifting creature which can mimic the voices of people it has come into contact with, and the sounds of woodland creatures. I would not suggest trying to capture the strange beast, but hunters across the globe were advised to carry a giant net should they hope to bag the legendary creature. Don't try it, not worth it. A series of howls and shrieks recorded in the Canadian wilderness left a hunter and government biologists searching for explanations. Gino Mikis was out hunting grouse with his wife and grandson in the forests of northwestern Ontario, more than 50 kilometers from the closest town, when they heard a series of eerie noises in the distance. When it first let out a scream, our lovely Gino thought it was a moose. But then his mind changed when it screamed again and again and again and again. He said this in a statement to Vice. So Mikis is an avid hunter and has grown accustomed to the sights and sounds of the region. Moose, black bears, wolves, they're pretty common sights in the backcountry. And this is all over northwestern and northeastern Ontario. He has heard many different animals in the wild, but nothing like this. He grew up hunting with his grandfather for most of his early years, and the howls initially came from the distance, but then they got closer and closer. He could actually hear it moving, and it sounded kind of heavy. His wife got scared, picked up the grandson, they started bolting for the vehicle, which, good on them, you want to stay safe. As the group retreated, Mikis pulled out his phone and began recording the howls, as well as his grandson trying to mimic them. Now the video, which has since been posted to YouTube, has received more than 500,000 views. Some folks were like, maybe it's a grizzly bear, which you mostly see black bears up there. While the species has never been documented in the region, a recent study found their range is dramatically larger than originally thought. Some other folks were like, maybe it's a big wolf. But the footage also prompted speculation that maybe it's evidence of a Sasquatch, maybe it's Bigfoot, or perhaps, possibly, it's the Algonquin beast. All of the above are legendary cryptids said to roam the hinterlands here in Canada. The latter, a figure from Indigenous folklore, is considered to be a malevolent spirit that can induce a psychosis. Biologists with Ontario's Ministry of Resources and Forestry are kind of skeptical that the sounds could come from an unidentified species, but they do admit they are not certain of the source. And this is according to spokeswoman Jolanta Kowalski. This was in an emailed statement to the media. She said, "Our biologists say it could be a larger mammal, maybe a wolf, but it's a considerable distance from the quarter, so there's no way to know for sure." Back in 2018, this next crazy video went viral, claiming to show a 6-foot eerie faceless creature reportedly stalking a moose in the Canadian wilderness. The video, which was viewed more than 30,000 times, was posted by Audrey Tanguay-Fréchette, who was unable to explain the footage. She said she was filming a moose on a roadside in Gaspésie, Quebec, here in Canada. And looking at the video, she saw a strange shape at the back left. Can somebody tell her what it is? Well, it's unclear what exactly was captured on film, but a lot of commenters were like, maybe it's Gollum, the fictional character from The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, which, okay, unlikely. But somebody was like, yeah, it looks like Gollum. Somebody else was like, my precious. Got it. A lot of folks had more fun with this. They were like, maybe it's a rake, which is a mythical creature that hunts animals without rhyme or reason. Saying like, yeah, that's a rake type creature stalking that moose. Must be pretty tall too. The creature does appear to stand up on its hind legs, but it's not clear exactly how tall it is. The Sun called it a 6-foot tall monstrosity. We here think, yeah, probably the creature we're not gonna name.
Number 3. The man in my scope. This next story comes to us from an interview that a YouTuber, Funkalopagus, did with a hunter who thinks he had an encounter with the creature or something else deeply strange late at night. He originally posted this story to Reddit with the name Perpetual Connection, so that's what we'll call him if it comes up. He says he was hunting boar. He was saving up for a while to get a special thermal vision scope. He took it to a range and waited from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. to find a good boar to bag, but surprisingly wasn't finding anything. And he noted that the area that he went up to was shockingly empty of wildlife, no deer, no rabbits, no coyotes, nothing, as opposed to it usually being pretty plentiful. So he was getting himself ready to leave, assuming it must have just been a bad day, when he heard a crunch come from the direction that he'd entered the park. So he raised his scope to see what it was and saw initially what he assumed was a bear, some big mass on his scope. He zoomed in a bit and jolted when he realized it wasn't a bear, but looked a bit more like a man. Now what was disturbing him was that he was about 30 miles away from any other public areas. And there were no other cars parked around, no wildlife to speak of. The only other living thing next to him was this person in his scope, who happened to be completely naked, twitching and grabbing at all the foliage. The OP then says that the mysterious figure looked up at him and in an extremely unsettling, high-pitched feminine voice began to call out for help. The hunter believed that he was being trapped and scrambled to escape. He said it didn't sound like this voice should be coming from this entity, and he said that the creature was staring at him with a wide smile and unfurled itself standing on its back legs, standing 6 feet tall or maybe more. He pointed his weapon at the unknown entity and warned for it to stand down, and said that it arched on its fours again and hissed at him like a cat before disappearing into the brush, screeching in wail. The hunter would return to his car and drive off in an absolute panic, I think like most of us would, and he would tell authorities what he saw, but he was only reprimanded for hunting at night. I mean, fair enough. If I reported that story to the sheriff or something, I think I as the sheriff would hear that and just, scratch that off, be like, oh, I'm not messing with that. So what do you think? Did he happen to come across someone in the woods who was just having a wild night on all of the substances, or was that a close encounter with death that he narrowly avoided? Number 2, the 2019 sighting. This next sighting happened in 2019. It's the same time as the first point. Coincidence? Absolutely, but worth mentioning nonetheless. This next story was posted to Reddit by a user named Bradley Innovates. Bradley tells about how he had just been discharged, honorably, don't worry, from the Marines and was returning home to his home state of Alabama. Sweet home Alabama, and was catching up visiting on old friends. His best friend Jacob in particular, the two of them had been friends their whole life and usually got up to, boyhood stuff, hanging out in the woods, that kind of thing. The two of them traveled out to a secluded campsite that they'd enjoyed when they were younger, bringing a long arm with them for target practice. The two were chatting and eventually got onto stories of cryptids in the woods, namely, you guessed it, the Wendigo. His friend told him one could summon this creature by speaking its name 3 times into the woods like Bloody Mary. I've said its name like 9 times in this video. I'm speaking into a camera, so I hope that's okay. I hope I'm not cursing you out there. Might be best just to sage your house a little bit after watching this video. Anyway, Bradley played along and spoke his name out 3 times, only to discover nothing happened. Until he heard a snap in the woods, and his reflexes instinctively darted backwards. A few coyotes ran by, and his friend decided that it was enough scares for the woods and started to pack up when a tree began to fall forward towards them. Now, if that wasn't already unnerving, the Redditor said the next thing he heard was the voice of his friend's younger sister calling out to them both, except they didn't bring her along and she wasn't anywhere nearby, and that's when both of them knew they were in far deeper trouble than they thought. They claimed that they saw an emaciated, fleshy monster, deathly thin, with next to no meat on its bones, skin as pale as ash, and a vibrant blue eyes. That actually sounds pretty familiar, to be honest. The men fired at it and ran screaming from the woods towards their car. They escaped, horrified by what they saw, but luckily alive. If this story is true, then that has to be a real-life encounter with the creature. Number 1, Jack Fiddler. There truly aren't many sightings or stories of Wendigos, and indigenous people don't particularly like to share these stories out of their tribes. Despite the popularity on apps like TikTok, it's a pretty niche bit of folklore. Of course, it could also be because there are people out there maintaining the local population. Jack Fiddler, or Zanhano Gahengogawa, was an Ojibwe shaman living in Sandy Lake in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was renowned among his people for being a hunter of the supernatural, defending his tribe from threats that no one else would be willing. There are many documented cases of indigenous people who, feeling themselves lose control to the appetite or the spirit within them, would request that someone close and trusted would be the one to finish them off. This could be a close friend of the family or a family member. It was an act of mutual trust. Zanhano Gahengogawa claims to have felled 14 Wendigos during his lifetime like this. Of course, not everyone would see it this way. By 1906, word would reach the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Mounties, that to them there was this is a quote, "a band of pagans in the habit of killing one another whenever one gets delirious through fever or other causes." By 1907, the mounted police had arrested Zanhano Gahengogawa and his brother Pescoquan for the death of Pescoquan's daughter-in-law. Locals in the tribe decried the decision, saying they didn't understand, and that the man they were accusing of being a killer was a quiet, dignified man who lived with a clear conscience. After 15 weeks of imprisonment, Zanhano Gahengogawa would escape from the police escort holding him. When they found him, he was lying on a rock with a sash tied in a knot around his neck. It was his way out of escaping persecution. Number 5. Some strange noises. One of the creature's signature calling cards is said to be its horrific wails, its pained shrieks that don't sound like any animal you'd recognize. It's also said that it's been able to imitate human voices to better lure out its prey. And perhaps those disconcerting sounds were caught on tape as recently as 2019, when a series of howls and shrieks left a hunter and a government biologist searching for answers as to what was going on in those woods. Gino Mikas was hunting with his wife and grandson in northwest Ontario in a fairly remote rural area, about 50 kilometers away from the nearest sign of civilization, most likely an en route. Sorry, rest of the world, that joke is just for Ontario. It's a Canadian cryptid, what can I say? At first, I thought it was a moose, but my mind changed when it screamed again and again. Mikas is an avid hunter, a resident of Sioux Lookout, and knows his way around the woods and what creatures should be living in it. He added on saying, "I've heard many different animals in the wild, but nothing like this. I grew up hunting with my grandfather for the first 12 years of my life. The howls initially came from the distance but soon appeared closer." We've got the clip, so why don't you take a listen for yourself and see what you think. Now, some speculated that it could be a grizzly bear. However, there's not a lot of evidence for that since grizzlies don't really live in these surrounding areas. They are known to roam, but there's not reports of grizzly bears nearby. Others speculated that it could be a wolf, which definitely is possible, but you would think that an expert seasoned hunter would recognize a wolf. So, there's a number of people who speculate that this could be the mythical Wendigo caught on tape. And if you're looking for way more stories of folklore, creatures, cryptids, well, you already know what channel I'm going to recommend. It's the one you're watching right now. We've got tons and tons of scary lists just waiting for you to discover. So hit that subscribe button. Please make sure to hit that bell so you don't miss a single scream and get all caught up. But do that at the end of this video if you wouldn't mind. I got way more Wendigo sightings coming up for you. Number 4. Southern Ontario sighting. Our next story also comes to us from my home province of Ontario. Makes a lot of sense. It's where a number of regional myths revolving around the Wendigo all originally stem from. Now this one comes to us from an anonymous Redditor who posted to the Skinwalkers subreddit detailing a strange encounter that they had, possibly with the creature. You take a listen to this. "I decided to take my dog out for a walk this afternoon and not put my headphones in. As we were walking along, I heard a voice calling out my name in a sing-songy way. I stopped and looked around and I called for my dog to come back to me, and he stopped where he was and stared at me for a while and then eventually came to me. I didn't acknowledge it. I walked around a little more and still didn't see anything. Now, I live with my parents, and my mom knows that stories about skinwalkers freak me out. A few days ago, we were having a bonfire, and she hid and tried to call for me in a scary voice to freak me out, so I assumed this was the same thing happening. I continued walking and I heard, 'Come over here,' and I was so freaked out because this sounded like it was my voice saying it, and I heard this so much more clearly, like it was coming from inside my head. I have no idea what was out there this afternoon, but I can tell you for certain I will never walk out there without my headphones on again. Can honestly say this was the weirdest experience of my life. Now, if you believe the legends and folklore, if you hear the creature calling out for you, the only correct thing to do is to ignore its attempts to lure you away. You don't want to go toe to toe with this thing. You're not going to stand a chance. So it sounds like the original poster in this situation, even though they were scared out of their wits, still made the right decision and got off with just a scare and a story instead of something much, much worse. Number 3, Iowa sighting. Our next story comes to us from Reddit once again, from the subreddit r/true scary stories. Not to imply the other stories we've been sharing are fake, just that these ones are definitely real. And quick shout out for the Reddit scary horror story community as a whole, putting all these campfire stories in one beautiful digital archive. Coming to us from a user, a Weird Doggo 64, love that name. They write, as a native, I think me and my mother had a close call with a skinwalker. Now this story I had to trim just the teeniest tiniest little bit for timing purposes, so it's paraphrased ever so slightly, but the story has been mostly left intact. My family has lived in Iowa since July of 2017, and we live in a small neighborhood with a minimum of maybe 25 houses, and it's surrounded by forestry. I've seen a bunch of horror movies over the years, so I get pretty paranoid. A year into living there, we get a new dog, and we named him Tucker. He's an energetic little guy with everybody. Now a couple years later, my mom and dad get divorced, and she moved on to a guy that lives a couple miles away from the house. My mom and dad settled on a pretty good schedule for when they could spend the day with us. Now my mom's side is my native side, and we do believe in the lore of skinwalkers. One day, it's my mom's turn to look after us. She's driving up this road surrounded by a bunch of trees and farms. There's a hill on this road, and as my mom drove up the hill, she saw something in a field that she described as being tall, gray-skinned, and had hooves for feet, and it was walking into the woods. Well, when she reached to a stop sign, she looked back in her mirror and nothing. Now my mom was terrified because she remembered the stories of skinwalkers she would hear as a girl. A couple days later, it was nighttime, and my dog had to go outside to the bathroom. I put him on a leash that's connected to the porch. I turned on a light that was outside so I could see where he was going, and I heard him barking. I walked towards the door and I told him to get in, and I look into the darkness to see nothing but eyes shining from the porch light. I pulled him in and I slammed the door as soon as he got outside. I covered every window in the house. It's been 2 months since then, and my routine when it gets dark was what I did when I saw those eyes. I closed the blinds, I locked the doors, and I turn off the lights. Something creeping in the dark? Raccoons? Skinwalkers? What do you think? Number 2. Wow, man, my titles for this one are really good, eh? Sighting. Skinwalker sighting. Our next story was also posted to the Skinwalkers subreddit by user MothGirl11. It's the freshest one up on the list too, posted just 11 days ago, so I hope they're doing well. It starts by saying, I have recently learned what skinwalkers are, and it completely made sense of an event that had happened to me when I was younger that I previously blocked out of my brain. I was visiting my mom's family in California with my parents and siblings. I'd been there before, and I always slept alone on an air mattress in the living room, which had a greenhouse glass pane wall to the front of the house. It was a usual summer evening and everyone was settled into bed. I remembered that I used to like staying up late playing games on my DS. Yeah, I've been getting a little sleepy when I started to hear strange rustling noises coming from the outside. I sat up and peered outside, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. The road outside was dimly lit. A few minutes pass and I tell myself it's just a strange animal or something. I laid myself back down, something across the street caught my eye, and I darted back up. Silently, I saw what appeared to be 2 coyote-like figures, only they were walking on their hind legs, which looked much bigger than their front ones. They appeared to be 6, maybe 7 feet tall, and the scariest part was there was absolutely no noise while they moved. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. One of them turned to look towards me, and I ducked my head down. At the time, I didn't think anything other than that I was freaked out. I never asked anyone about it, and it was only as an adult that I realized that there are no animals like the ones I saw. You've got to be a really brave kid, I think, to see 2 7-foot-tall bipedal coyotes and think, yeah, that's just something coyotes do. I would spend the rest of my life buying silver bullets and drawing like salt circles on the floor. Oof. Alright, and at number 1, the new property. Our final story comes to us from someone who might have cursed themselves into moving into a haunted property. Let's take a listen to this posted on a paranormal subreddit by user 1additional2103. It starts by saying, "We've been living at this new house for 13 days. We've been taking some suggestions for cleansing the home to get any bad vibes out, but there's a creepy pattern happening. For the 3rd time, I just found bones just outside our door." Hey, whoa. Stop the track. Stop the music. Stop the narration. Stop everything. This was the 3rd time you found bones outside your front door, and you didn't burn your house down and move 6 states over. Anyway, okay, yeah, moving on. A few nights ago, there was a pile of smaller bones by the door leading to the front porch. This is a really clear message. On one of the first few nights, there was a long bone by the rear door right where I found a deer skull. I didn't think anything of it the first few times. Again, aside, I'm not sure why, but whatever. I gotta move on from this. Assuming the long bone was left there by a previous owner, and I chalked up the pile to an animal, but it's kind of weird that it's happened 3 times now, and each time by a door. The other strange things happening to me are I can't get the motion lights to work outside at all. They were already installed. I changed bulbs twice now in them, and they worked when I went inside, but the next night they didn't. So I'm just chalking this one up to bad wiring. A few times I've heard very strange sounds coming from the woods. I'm an avid hunter and I do a lot of camping, and I've never heard anything like this before. It kind of sounds like a propeller chopping through wood. Do either of these things sound like I'm dealing with something out of my league? I'm sorry if these are dumb questions and stories, but there's just something about this property that makes me worried. Number 5, weird goat. Coming up first on our list of unsettling skinwalker encounters is this strange footage that's been making the rounds around TikTok, and understandably why when you see, how weird this is. Take a quick look for me. Looks like a cute little goat at first. As cute as a goat can be, no goat hate. Until it gets up close to the front door and stares, there's just something off about this thing, you know? Goats are kind of weird looking as is, but this one looks like it's got a secret behind its eyes, or it's giving you that look where it's asking you if you have any games on your phone. It just looks wrong, you know, in that indescribable uncanny valley way, especially as it's shown when the video cuts back again and we see the goats almost got like dog looking eyes. It certainly does not look like any goat that I have ever seen, that's for certain. Now, I couldn't tell you if this is a skinwalker in disguise wearing a goat costume, or just a goat being particularly bizarre, which is not entirely unheard of. Goats are considered one of the more demonic animals. They're very commonly associated with Satan and Lucifer and all sorts of hellish manners. It's said that skinwalkers are Dene witches who have gone against the natural order of things and use powerful magic to be able to take the form of any animal that they so please. As some local legends say that a way to suss out a skinwalker is through their eyes, being able to see them shine differently than normal. That would certainly explain what's going on with this goat's bizarre eyes, and unless there's any goat experts out there in the comments that can help me out with this one, I'm really not sure what we're looking at besides something terrifying. And if you're looking for more terrifying stories about skinwalkers, cryptids, aliens, really just about anything scary under the sun, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click through, find something to like, stay subscribed, stay scared, but please, keep watching this video. We did work pretty hard on it. Alright. Back to it. We got way more skinwalker stories for you coming up. Number 4, Idaho. Now, Idaho is pretty well known in the paranormal community as being a place where a lot of strange stuff is going on. It's no Ohio, but it's up there as far as scary states go. Our first freaky story is gonna come to us from a Redditor, Chuck Wool, sharing their story on the Skinwalker subreddit. Here we go. Listen to this. It was mid-November 2021, and me and a bunch of friends were camping in the woods in the Sawtooth National Forest near Petite Lake. There were 2 groups of people in 2 tents and 1 in a car, and my buddy and I in hammocks near the edge of the camp. It's about 1 a.m. and we had all been sleeping for about 2 hours. I wake up to my hammock mate panting extremely heavily and yelling my name, and I'm a bit confused and I get up and help him. He's paralyzed by fear. He said that he had extremely vivid dreams, that there was a tall and slender, all black figure trying to break into his car after he'd seen the figure take my head off and the rest of our friends. Normal everyday fun campfire dreams under the stars kind of deal. He said that he woke up and he swore he saw the figure near the car and that he saw all of our heads on sticks. I was obviously pretty freaked out at this point, as I think most people would be, and I immediately felt very uneasy. I told him it was just a bad dream and that he should go back to sleep. One of our buddies yells, proceeding to wake up most of the camp, and we find that our friend in the car that my buddy said clicked the car alarm, so All of us, scared and awake now, have a conversation about what is going on. And my friend in the car says that he heard something scratching on the window and said that he saw a slender black figure running around the car. And the next morning we all talked about what had happened. And 6 of them all had similar nightmares describing similar things. Tall, slender black figures, heads on pikes, the whole scary 9 yards. We had friends that had stayed at the same site 6 months earlier, and a few of them felt like they were being watched. There are strange things afoot in the Idaho mountains. So what do we think, my top 5 scary gang? Skinwalkers? Witches? Slender Man? Or just something in the coffee? Number 3. Our next story comes to us from a website called darkstories.org. Let me tell you, there's some dark stories on here, but it was a fascinating little walk to go through. Let's take a look at our first one. The user writes, about almost a year ago, I used to live in a somewhat isolated neighborhood that was in the high desert of California. I lived in a dirt road, and since the homes were so proud out, wildlife wasn't an uncommon thing. You'd see rabbits, coyotes, snakes, and on rare occurrences sometimes deer. But once you lived out there for a while, you got used to animals roaming around during the late hours. I'm indigenous, so most of the time I actually enjoy seeing wildlife close to my home. But I have always known of a creature my tribe refers to as the Skinwalker. And I'm not supposed to say that word, but it was typed, so hopefully there's no bad omen. Hey, is it fine if I say it? Can we look into that? Can we get somebody on that? Okay, back to it. The house I lived in had a very large backyard and gravel mixed with dirt driveway, leaving a lot of open space to look out from. My room was at the front of the house, and every night if I had my window open, I'd find myself staring out at the front gate of our driveway. It was quiet every night, unless you heard coyote howls. There was a lot of strange things up there. At the time I was homeschooled, and I was sitting in the office in silence doing my work. In the silence I heard a knock by the window that I couldn't see out of. I couldn't see through because we didn't have blinds or curtain, we had sliding doors as windows instead. So I turned my head to look at the window and it went silent. But then I thought I heard someone or something walking. Months later I changed rooms with the office, and I was looking out that same window that I heard those footsteps, except it was night. I saw a figure on the side of the gate that looked like it was a coyote, but it was too long. And the way it was moving looked like it was something that wasn't from this world, as if it was a human trying to imitate a dog. It stood there as still as a statue until it stood up and tried to climb over the gate. I shut the barn door and I heard it running before I closed the gate. And that was the last time I ever kept my windows open at night. Honestly, probably good advice. A little bit of cold air is not worth that. Number 2, the shopping mall. This next one is a wild one. It's titled Skinwalker at a Shopping Mall. Hey, I guess they want to check out the lush sales sometimes too. I get it, take care of that fur. It starts by saying, I'm a security guard at a gigantic shopping mall with some other guards. I went off to my area while the others went to theirs. I started to do my rounds, going into shop. It was getting kind of close to Halloween and the mall was packed. That's when I noticed him. This cloaked figure coming towards me smoothly. It bumped into me as it passed me and I felt this feeling of fear. I called out to it to see if I'd get a response. I yelled something, I don't know, like stop, right there. It didn't acknowledge that I was there, so I followed it to see where it was going. It stopped and turned slightly to see if it was being followed, then continued down. But the pursuit was cut short by an elderly man falling down in a shop. I went to go help him up. I turned back to where the cloaked figure was walking around, but it wasn't there. It vanished into thin air. I went to have my break, and when I was about to walk through the door, I happened to run into my friend. I asked him, almost as a joke, "Hey, you didn't happen to see a cloaked figure walking around?" He went white and said yeah, and this time it was looking at me. We both sat down and didn't bring it up again for the rest of the shift. When the night shift began, I hopped on the cart, fired up the belt driver, and started doing my round. Then I heard a sound that sounded like laughing. I yelled, "Who's there?" and I shone my light on what looked like the rear end of a grizzly, a gigantic grizzly bear, but its front half looked like a bobcat with red eyes and fangs. "Who's there?" it said in a distorted version of my own voice. I was done. I jumped into the cart and I sped all the way to the entrance of that mall and I ran outside. I've never seen it since that incident. And did you happen to look for a new job or something? Maybe change states, or are you still working at the mall where you know there's probably a skinwalker at? And number 1, I tried to save the best for last with this story posted by user Go Cougar about a skinwalker and their family. You take a listen. I had to snip just a little bit out of this one for timing, but we kept the big beats of it, and it's a good story, and I'm glad we have it. After graduating high school, Aunt Ani got a job at the grocery store. She started dating a regular and would sneak out at night. It was nothing out of the ordinary until my mom would return home seeing strange items such as tomahawks and animal skulls carved with strange writing and script scripture in the backyard. Growing up listening to many stories about witchcraft, skinwalkers, and wendigos like most kids in the res, she immediately became curious about these items. It had become obvious that the relationship wasn't all that it seemed. My mom took one of these skulls to the tribal elder. After examining it, the elder told my mom that the skull was crafted to perform black magic, and the elder was very suspicious. A few days later, Sean and Annie snuck out to the backwoods, but my mom decided to stalk them to see what they were doing. Sean and Annie arrived at an open space in the woods while my mom was hiding in the bushes. They fell into a trance and fell onto the ground screaming and laughing uncontrollably, followed by a sound of bone cracking. They transformed into tall, half deer, half human creatures standing on their back legs. My mom bolted out of the bushes, running back to the trailer to tell the elders everything she saw. A few days later, my mom went to Annie's trailer to pack up and found a note written that said, "I love you. I'm off to a better world." And that was the last Annie was heard from. But 2 months after Annie's disappearance, my mom got woken up by a voice calling her name during an afternoon nap. She immediately recognized the voice. It was Aunt Annie. But when she went outside, she didn't see anyone around except for a deer with a lip and bright green eyes. This deer walked up to my mom and bowed as if it wanted my mom to pet it. My mom believed it was Aunt Annie, her final goodbye. Whew. Alright, number 5. Now before we dive in proper, I did want to take a quick aside to point out that traditionally a lot of Dene people don't particularly like sharing stories of skinwalkers, as it is a fairly taboo subject. With that in mind, I thank the storytellers who did share the ones I was able to find, and want to stress though with this video, we are just hoping to entertain. Now with that in mind, let's get into it. Our first story was posted to us on a Skinwalker subreddit. I clipped it a little bit, but the rest of it's intact. Let me start off by saying that my wife doesn't believe in paranormal things. We've got cats, and one of them likes to be a rebel, jumping onto counters and meowing as loud as he can for attention. He does this all night. The other night, after some drinks and video games, I decided to head to bed. When I woke up, my wife had wide eyes and a nervous look. I asked her what happened, and she said that at around 3 a.m. in the morning, she was woken up by a noise that sounded like one of the cats howling, except that the meow sounded more like a person trying to imitate a cat, sounding like it was saying hello. Yeah, that's what it would sound like. A loud bang came at the door, and then a notification went off on the motion sensor. And when she told me this, I checked my phone, and sure enough, there was a notification for motion at around 2:52 a.m. I asked her why she didn't wake me, and she said she didn't want it to hear her. Everything was making me uncomfortable about this story, so I set the home security alarm around 9 p.m., and I didn't turn it off until I walked the dog this morning. We slept with all the animals in the bedroom with the door closed, so whatever tripped it was not one of our pets, and it made me think it was a skinwalker. But I'm just paranoid. I checked all the rooms when I got up. I don't know why, but my wife was scared so badly. We bought this house brand new and no one lived here before me. But when I'm alone, I feel like something's off and I'm being watched. I got home from errands today, and when I went to hang up a shirt, I noticed a board that covers our attic had been moved. I asked my wife what happened, and she said she has no idea. We're going to my mother-in-law's today to get some sage. My wife said burning it should keep whatever is around us away. But what do you think, my gang? Just paranoid? Or is there perhaps something suspicious sneaking around those woods? And my friends, if you're looking for more great creepy stories narrated by this blonde mug, you already know where to go. Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We've got a little something freaky for everyone. Cryptids, aliens, conspiracies, true crime, horror movies. If it's scary, we got a video or two on it. So hit subscribe, click that little bell, and don't miss a single thing. But do it at the end of this video, okay? I got more Skinwalker stories coming for you right now. Number 4. Our next story also comes to us from the Skinwalker subreddit. I mean, where else would Skinwalker stories come from, really? When my mother was young, she lived with my grandmother in a place full of wood. There were more woods than houses. You wouldn't really call it a street or a neighborhood. It was more a reserved area where the houses were all well away from each other. And there were so many trees and tall bushes that at night everything was dark. My mom had a dog named Toby. One night my mother and my grandmother were at home as usual, and they heard noise in the logs stacked outside. The lumber was for renovating the house, and it was right next to Toby's doghouse. My grandma went to see what he was doing, and when she went to scold him for messing with the lumber, she saw Toby's head come up and look at her. But he lifted his head so high that my grandmother saw what really was looking at her. She described what she saw as a person walking on all fours with their feet and hands touching the ground, but covered in black fur and a dog's head. Before returning home running, she noticed the real Toby was scared to death in his doghouse. Days later, Toby started to get sick. He wasn't eating properly and wouldn't leave the house. He was so scared that he'd go to the bathroom inside. He started to go blind, his fur started to fall out, and it wasn't long before he passed away out of fear. The same thing happened to a neighbor's dog, and maybe most concerningly, the chickens from another neighbor were plucked from the coop and split open. My mom and I talked about that time, and she told me that the thing tried to copy Toby's appearance, and the blindness was how they stun who they're going to eat.
Number 3 on this list is the white mask. This one is kind of similar to the last one we looked at, but instead of a pale white face, it seemed as if the creature was wearing a white mask. Ranker says, in Hunt for the Skinwalker, George Knapp and Colm Kelleher relay the stories of those who came into contact with skinwalkers near Native American tribal lands. One account from a New Mexico Highway Patrol officer states that while patrolling the highways of New Mexico, he saw a skinwalker on 2 separate occasions. In his first encounter, a creature wearing a white mask appeared next to his window, seemingly attaching itself to the car door. But then he realized it was simply running beside the vehicle, keeping pace at highway speeds. A few days later, and around the same area, he encountered the creature again. What makes this tale even more intriguing is that at least one other officer claimed to have seen the same ghoulish being while patrolling the area. Maybe it was actually a white mask that our friend saw in the previous entry instead of the white face he described. Either way, this one seems dangerous as all holy hell. To be able to run with a car going on the highway? Yeah, that is pretty far from natural, guys. I'd say that considering there were multiple witnesses here, this is probably some of the best proof we have that these creatures are legit. Number 2 on this list is No Ordinary Girl. This is a story, as you may have guessed, about a girl that probably wasn't a girl. Ranker says the tale of terror comes all the way from Australia. While walking her dogs out in the Australian bush, a woman encountered a fearful sight. She was enjoying the trail when suddenly her 2 dogs started barking uncontrollably and becoming extremely agitated. Soon she saw what appeared to be a small female child no older than 7. The child had her back to the woman, who was only a bit startled at first as she believed the child was just part of a camping party. However, when the girl turned around, her eyes were lifeless and entirely black. Before the woman could make a break for it, the creature let out an ear-splitting howl and ran off into the bush, never to be seen again. She was left wondering if the child she saw was someone pulling a prank on her or if it really was a shape-shifting skinwalker. She may never know. Maybe the scariest part about this one is that if this story is true, it means skinwalkers can be found outside of America. Conventional wisdom has kind of said that these creatures are only in North America, but that might not be true. If they're all the way in Australia, then they could literally be anywhere. Hopefully it was just a prank, but based on the circumstances, I kinda doubt it. And finally, number 1 on this list is the 6 Men. This is another story about how some type of beasts were able to keep up with a car. Ranker says, my friend's mission region had a reservation within its boundaries. However, it was relatively far from where he was serving. On one occasion, him and his mission companion were asked to travel further than usual to meet some investigators. This took them near the reservation. On their way home, their car ran out of gas, and it wasn't until late at night that they were able to continue the journey home. My friend chose a different route that took him through some back roads in an attempt to get home sooner. He told us he was driving above the speed limit when he noticed movement in the woods lining the road. Because coyotes were common in the area, he took little notice at first. Then he looked out the window and slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop jolted his companion awake, who immediately wanted to know what was wrong. My friend was shaken, and he said he would tell him once they got home. He asked him to say a prayer. By the time they made it home, his companion was dying to know what had happened. My friend told him, I looked down at the road next to the car and saw 6 men running on all 4s, keeping up with the car. I was driving 40 miles an hour. 6 dudes on all 4s keeping up with a car going 40 miles an hour. Usain Bolt, the fastest man of our generation, in his best race ever, reached a top speed of 27.33 miles per hour. That's the fastest man in the world running the fastest he's ever run on 2 legs, and he still doesn't come close to touching what the car was doing. One thing is definitely clear from doing this video, guys. Skinwalkers, if they are real, are clearly fast as hell. And if one decides that it wants to target you, I don't know if you're going to be able to escape. Number 5 on this list is the orange eyes. As a decently recent university graduate, this story is pretty triggering to me. User John shared his story of how a relaxing midnight stroll turned terrifying when he came face to face with 2 skinwalkers. According to his chilling story, John was out late one summer night. While listening to music and enjoying the cool weather, he walked near a large empty field that that was adjacent to a college campus. Suddenly, he felt something staring at him. Shining his flashlight out into the darkness, he saw 2 sets of glowing orange eyes staring back at him. The eyes were at least 7 feet off the ground and stared at him without blinking once. John made a mad dash for safety. As he was running, he turned back to see one of the creatures chasing him. John became even more frightened when he got a better glimpse of the fast-moving creature behind him. It looked like a giant wolf. Quickening his pace, John reached his home safely, but he remains fearful of the monsters he saw that night, which he believes were skinwalkers. I titled this entry Orange Eyes because that, plus the fact that they were 7 feet off the ground, are the biggest things that stick out to me here. A wolf's eyes aren't typically bright orange. They can be a mild hue of that color, but I doubt that it was a mild hue if that's the first thing that stuck out to him in the night. Not to mention the fact that these creatures were 7 feet off the ground and how unnatural that is. Even if for some reason a wolf stood on its hind legs, it still wouldn't be that tall. Whatever it was that was after John that evening doesn't sound like the friendliest of creatures if you ask me. He's probably pretty lucky to have made it out alive. Number 4 on this list is the white face. This story is especially scary because it seems like the Skinwalker is actually stalking our victim. Ranker says, "My roommate has told me this story a few times and I want to see if anyone else has had similar experiences. As he tells it, he was driving home super late at night, maybe around 3 or 4 a.m. in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, both times that this occurred. The first time he was driving alone on a road that has an open field to the left of it when out of nowhere a black figure on all fours bounds up out of the field and across the road in front of his car. As soon as the figure got to the other side of the road, it stops with inhuman quickness, turns around, and looks directly at my roommate. He described the figure as looking simian, completely black except for the face. The creature's face was a stark white human face. Not white as in Caucasian, but white as snow. This happened again a few weeks later, but this time the creature was sitting in a tree. As his car approached, it climbed down the tree, again with inhuman quickness, bounded across the road, stopped on a dime, and turned around and made eye contact with him. This time he had a friend in the car who also saw it and began freaking out. It was the same exact thing as the first time, a simian black body with a snow white expressionless human face. My roommate, ever the curious one, turned the car around and began searching for the creature, but it was nowhere to be seen. What has a totally black and creature-like body but also a white as snow pale human face? I'll answer that one for you guys. A skinwalker. Scariest part about this one, like I said earlier, is the fact that it went out of its way to find this same guy again. I find it hard to believe that he just happened to stumble upon this creature just out of coincidence. I think it's far more likely that the creature was looking out for this guy and putting itself into spots that it might run into him. Really not a pleasant thought if you think about it.
Number 3, do you believe? Coming in next today is going to be this clip that was posted to TikTok by a user by the name of Do You Believe? Do you believe? We do. That's exactly why we're here today, baby. We believe. Now, this video takes place in the pitch black of night, looking in someone's backyard as someone is staring into the eyes of what looks like a neighborhood dog. But if you've learned anything from this video so far, it's that looks can be fairly deceiving. The dog isn't the uploaders, as they don't recognize the animal and they're a bit unnerved by Fido coming forward towards them. The eyes seem to be staring deep through the internet and directly into my soul just a little bit. The dog keeps approaching slowly before finally jumping out at the person recording the video and also coincidentally sending me recoiling about 5 feet back from my screen and my phone flying across the room. No relation though. Now, this clip definitely had people talking though, with just as many people suggesting that it could just be a dog doing what a dog does and being kind of silly in a backyard. I could certainly see that. Dogs are known to be silly, but this dog is definitely creepy. I don't know if they taught this dog to behave like this, but the way it stalks has me scratching my head just a little bit. Now, there are some commenters on this video who say that they find this video cuter than they do scary, which is definitely fair. It is a cute dog, if not a scary one. So as always, whenever there's a bit of unknown in the air, there's a little room for discussion and speculation, I toss it over to you, my faithful YouTube commenter gang. Is this just a regular old Labrador with its eyes hitting the camera just right? Or is there something about this old dog that ain't what it seems? Could this be a bit of a Cujo situation? Does this thing know any new tricks like shape shifting? Number 2, creepy real. Coming up next is going to be this clip that was posted to TikTok by the user Creepy Real. Creepy Real, well, I do videos that are real creepy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh no, please, I'm here all week. That pun is what my degree paid for. Reading is not what my degree paid for. I didn't go to school for book learning, I went to school for talking. Now this next video is short and sweet. We see someone getting chased by something. We don't really get too good a look, but honestly that could be a mercy. What we can see is that the person chasing our cameraman seems to be human, but not doing a perfect job of it. The caption calls it a human disguised as a skinwalker. Now, I found something kind of interesting about this video. I thought it was pretty creepy, gave me the heebie-jeebies, but as I was going through the comments on this one, I noticed that every third comment was someone saying this isn't a skinwalker, but rather a djinn. In fact, seriously, if you look at the link, almost every comment is alleging this, as if this is a very known practice and we're all fools for making the mistake. So I did a little digging and I thought I'd share what I learned. Jinn are thought to be spirits, creatures that are thought to originate from Islamic folktales. They are considered to be invisible creatures, but can take the form of humans as well as various animals, predominantly slimy things like snakes. They're pretty similar to skinwalkers, all things considered, but while a skinwalker is a shape-shifting shaman cast off from Dene society, a djinn was born into the world of spirit. Interestingly too, djinn are thought to neither be evil or good, but just rather are, and each are their own unique entity with their own desires and drives. It's thought that you can only see a djinn if they want you to see them, so if this creature really is a djinn chasing our cameraman, well, there must be some reason for it. Of course, the possible reason for it is that it is TikTok, and downright likely that this is someone trying to get a few clicks on TikTok, or just something scary that happened and made for some great views. Regardless, made my hair stand on end a little bit. I hope it freaked you out ever so slightly too. And if you know a little bit more about djinns and the difference between djinns and skinwalkers, please share some of that information with the casual crypt keeper. I love to learn, and you all are a great source of information for me. And number 1, wilderness survival. Coming in at this number 1 spot is this very strange clip that was uploaded. Let me tell you, if you're looking for weirdness on the internet, yeah, Top 5 Scary is an amazing place. I do some great work finding it for you, but TikTok really is the place to be. It's the strangest black hole on the internet for a reason. This clip was going around the front page recently, and it's not hard to see why. In it, we can see what looks like a fairly dated old analog VHS footage of what I can make out as some countryside. I'm not sure where though. I'm not a geoguesser guy. The sights of the American countryside sure would be beautiful if it weren't for the gut-wrenching screaming that you can hear in the background as someone is begging and pleading for anyone, please, anyone to come help. But as the camera pans and zooms, there doesn't seem to be anyone around for miles except for whoever is filming and a single mysterious person standing alone in a field, completely ignorant to it all, as if they don't even hear it. In fact, the person standing there doesn't seem to really even be there, you know what I mean? Sort of gently swaying in the breeze like a scarecrow. Could it be that this is a skinwalker and the sounds we hear are the last panicked screams it heard from one of its victims? It's considered a trait of skinwalkers that not only are they able to take on the form of any animal or human that they wish, but they're also able to mimic other humans' speech or animal cries with perfect clarity. And that pain in the person's screams are super creepy. And if you thought this clip was super duper creepy, I've got fantastic news for you. This clip was an excerpt from Gemini Home Entertainment, a fantastic series of online internet horror videos presented as an anthology of old VHS tapes, much like the super successful VHS film series, if you know those. This one is from the one titled Wilderness Survival Guide, and it's honestly one of the better ones in the series. I would super recommend it. Definitely if you like any of this sort of stuff, like analog horror, skinwalkers, crediting artists, any of that stuff, give it a watch. Number 5, the deer. Coming up first today on our list of skinwalker footage that has everybody double checking the family pets and other assorted wildlife to make sure they haven't been replaced with any sinister shape-shifting shamans, is this little clip from TikTok of a member of the Curvidae family acting real bizarre. That's a fancy word for deer. I want to make sure you learn something every day. Roll the clip. Now, someone is out in the woods late at night hunting by themselves, which if any horror movie has ever taught me anything at all, not a good idea. I mean, they clearly know it's not a good idea either, since the caption of the video is always hunt with others. Something isn't right with this deer, and that much is obvious. The deer is staring into the camera with empty eyes. It's got that total deer in the headlights look, probably because it's a deer in the headlights. Is that where that saying comes from? You'd think the buck might be scared of the car pulled in front of it or the people filming, but instead it just seems to stare back with that empty-eyed stare. Now, when it turns its head, we can see the thing's bottom jaw hanging open, limp, as if it's barely being held together by decaying tissues, or if the deer's reanimated like a zombie. Now, this could be a shape-shifting shaman of Dene folklore, or a little bit more likely, and you know I like to play the skeptic, it could be a deer suffering from a horrible disease called epizootic hemorrhagic, which occurs when a deer is bitten by a midge, that's a disgusting little mosquito-like bug carrying the virus, which wreaks all sorts of havoc to the deer's neurological systems, causing it to act abnormally and very scary, and I would wager that most footage you find online of a deer acting strange could be traced back to this. Another common symptom of EHD is the deer's tongue swelling to uncomfortable sizes, which would leave its maw agape and sort of give off that terrifying look of the deer's jaw sort of like hanging around by a thread there. Now, EHD isn't considered a risk to humans, so you don't have to worry about it too much, but if you were a deer watching this video right now, oh buddy, if you were a deer, I tell you to be careful, okay? It's midge season, and you don't want your legacy as a deer to be ending up in one of these videos. And if you're looking for more videos of all sorts of bizarre things that no one can explain, well, that's what Top 5 Scary trades in spades. We've got so much of that. We got aliens, ghouls, cryptids, goblins galore, anything freaky you can think of, we've got 2 to 4 videos on it. So hit subscribe, please make sure you ring that little bell as well so you're not missing a single beat, but do that at the end of this video if you wouldn't mind so much, because I got 4 more clips of weird skinwalker things around the net that I would just love to show you. Number 4. Wade Lanagan. Coming up next is going to be this video that was posted to TikTok by users Wade Lanagan, showing a pretty horrifying suburban little scene. Something that I found kind of interesting whenever I do these videos, I do research, is that a lot of mythology and folk tales about skinwalkers sort of incorporate how bad they want to worm their way into your house. Makes sense, that's where you live, I guess, and they want to get at you. Now, obviously, you should do just about whatever it takes to prevent this from happening. In this clip, we see exactly that in practice. A young mother and her child are at home when they're apprehended by someone, or perhaps more accurately, something. Something that's slamming at the door. Now, in this clip, it certainly looks like a person, but it screeches like a monster out of your worst nightmare. So some sort of ear-scratching scream that shouldn't be coming out of any living thing. And it seems to be covered in some sort of red liquid, although maybe it's just me, but it does look a little bit like Cheeto dust. I'm not saying a skinwalker can't eat a little flaming hot Cheeto now and again. I don't really know what they eat, actually. I've always assumed they eat man, but maybe they're omnivorous and like a snack here and there. The strange being runs off, but before the mother and child can catch their breath, we hear that same familiar knocking slamming away on the door, and the video cuts out. But if you really like that video, don't worry, I'm not gonna post for Top 5 twice, and you wanted to see more and more about the family, going onto their TikTok account reveals a 4-part series of videos chronicling their tracking of a possible skinwalker and their eventual pursuit by one. Now, these clips, you know, not gonna lie to you, these are definitely just a home production, but I wanted to put them up because I thought they were fun, you know? I talk about horror movies on the channel all the time, and what is a TikTok if not a very short horror movie for people who've got places to be? I've got nothing but love for anyone making horror content at home, so if you were interested in this and you liked it, give the channel a check out. Wade Lanagan, they got lots more spooky paranormal stuff on TikTok for you to enjoy. Number 3, Motoans. Motoans is a popular YouTuber and influencer known for BMX and motorcycling videos. Owen's a motorcycle enthusiast, and so his channel primarily focuses on motorcycle content, reviews of new bikes, advice for riders, general discussion about the wild world of motorcycling. But that's not all, he's also got videos about his personal experiences and his travels on 2 wheels, including almost coming dangerously close to death while in the woods while filming a video. You take a quick look at this clip posted to his Instagram, and you tell me what you think you hear or see. Probably something scary. While cycling, Owen comes across some bizarre sounds in the woods that he believes sounds like someone screaming out for help. It's hard to say that's not exactly what it sounds like, because it does sound like someone shrieking, but that could be something mimicking human calls. Now, more than a few people in the comments suggested this could be a mountain lion, because allegedly mountain lion calls sound like a shrieking woman. That's something hikers should be aware of. I've never heard that before. Now, I've got to say, Owen is a pretty wise guy, because as soon as he starts hearing mysterious screaming in the wild that he can't explain, instead of poking around the woods and trying to figure out what's happening, he rather intelligently chooses to get on his bike, rev up, and gets the heck out of there before he could get a chance to be introduced to whatever cryptid could have been lying out there. So what do you think, gang? Was that just a bobcat or a mountain lion out in the woods, or did he come very, very close to something he would not have wanted to see? Number 2, the proof is out there. Our next sighting comes to us today from the History Channel of all places. I guess in a way, it could be considered modern day history, right? It details a sighting by 2 Canadian security guards in 2021 of a possible sighting with this creature up close and personal. You see, it was May 2021 in Saskatchewan, and 2 security guards working on a Cree reservation were driving home after a 12-hour shift when they spotted something bizarre on the drive home. They recorded it, and we've got a bit of footage for you here to play. We'll roll it now and let us know what you think you can see down below. It's very difficult to make out entirely, but if you're really looking, and the video does outline it a bit, which helps, you can see a translucent, ghostly figure appearing in the clearing while they're driving. This figure seems formless, almost ethereal in a way, as if it's not even a solid creature. It blends in with the grass so well, it almost seems as if it's part of the scenery or wildlife that's straight up just come to life and sprouted out of the ground. Now, when this clip was posted, commenters were going wild because they thought this could be definitive proof of one of these shape-shifting evil medicine men caught on tape. Now, invisibility, or, being see-through, isn't usually described as being an ability of one of these creatures. I think people might be getting them confused with the Predator from the awesome action movie series. An important distinction to note when we talk about these things is that they're not cryptids per se. And shouldn't be talked about as such or considered like they're a creature or a wild animal, contrary to how it might seem, but rather the legend of these things is that they're shamans and medicine men who have isolated themselves from the rest of the tribe and way of life and are engaging in dark, unholy practices. Now, that's not to say that invisibility is totally impossible. It could be within the realm of these things. I think if you're shape-shifting, theoretically, you could also be turning invisible, but I'm just saying they have enough tricks up their sleeve already. Shape-shifting feels like enough of a cool party trick. You don't need to also add being invisible on that. Your resume's full enough. You got the job. Number 1, the Washington sighting. Now, our next sighting comes to us from Reddit, posted to the Skinwalker subreddit. It's a first-hand account of a Washington local describing what they thought they saw on a camping trip with their partner. The poster describes going camping with her boyfriend, the 2 of them having significant camping experience. They both grew up in a rural area surrounded by farmland, so they're no stranger to the outdoor. And they decided for a fun, romantic weekend camping trip to go camping about 45 minutes away from Yakima around indigenous territory. They pull up to the lake at about 10:45, and immediately on rolling up, the poster said she got a terrible feeling, like deep in her stomach. She said it wasn't just like kind of a bad feeling about things, but a profoundly bad vibe, saying as if it felt like there was evil radiating deeply throughout her. I personally would turn the car around if that happened to me, but hey, power to you. She realizes as she's looking around the campsite, the reason she feels so strongly about this place is because she's had a dream about it before. It's not just deja vu or something, but something she had seen in her mind's eyes. She tells her boyfriend that she's dreamt this place, everything about it, every little detail, and goes into detail, talking about seeing a pale, creepy face with reflective eyes staring at her through the trees and then running as fast as she could. Pretty scary dream. So they pull up to the campsite eventually. Her boyfriend lights a smoke and they sit around the campfire and soon after start to hear screaming. But she says it doesn't sound like human screaming the way you expect it to. It sounds like someone had distorted and spliced together screams from multiple sources into one, harmonizing perfectly. Now, moments later, this scream appears again, only this time the scream feels even closer. Her boyfriend puts his smoke out and grabs a weapon from their truck, and they wait in the tent for the rest of the night. When they wake up that next morning and check on their site, the cigar had been taken. Now, in some legends, when you hear these creatures far away, when you hear the voice screaming, it means they're closer than you think. So what do you think? Did these two get lucky? Was it just paranoia in the woods setting in? Or did they narrowly avoid being the main characters in the next Blair Witch movie? And that's about all she wrote for this video, my ghouls and my goblins. Our first sighting today is a short clip that's been being passed around the paranormal corners of the internet, and for good reason. Could very well have a recording of one of these wretched creatures caught on tape. Let me roll just a little bit of it for you and see if you can decide for yourself just what's going on down there. It's hard to say exactly what's happening here without proper context. Unfortunately, the original person who posted it didn't add a lot. We can see a bunch of animals running through the forest, migrating, or perhaps they're running to try and escape something, namely the very strange entity running behind them. We can see someone or something running swiftly, looking human-esque, but it feels more like something's doing an impression of a human, something that's wearing a human skin, if you catch my drift. Doesn't quite move how a man should. Its arms appear unnaturally long and out of proportion. It seems like a feral creature living amongst the animals in disguise. Now, not everyone agrees with what this creature could be. Some commenters have suggested that this could be a sighting of a rake, which is also sometimes called a crawler, a similarly reported cryptid. It's a long, skinny, humanoid-looking thing, usually with like pale or gray skin that lives out in the wood. Now, there are a bunch of differences between these creatures. For one thing, a rake is not a shapeshifter of any kind, whereas one of these is said to be able to take the appearance of any creature it wishes. It should also be noted that when we talk about skinwalkers, traditionally they're not actually cryptids or monsters, but rather a human who's capable of witchcraft. It's hard to keep all your scary humanoid cryptids straight in a line, but that's why you got Top 5 Scary to help out where you can. And if you're looking for way more scary stories of cryptids, well, my friend, you are already in the right place. If cryptids aren't your jam, we've got a video on just about every single freaky thing you can think of under the sun and above it. We got conspiracies, we got aliens, we got monsters, monster movies, you name it. Hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you don't miss a single scream, but you do that at the end of this video, okay? I got way more creature sightings coming for you right now. Number 4, another video sighting for you coming up. Well, of sorts, you'll see. This next one was uploaded to the internet about a month ago to Reddit, titled Navajo Depiction of a Skinwalker on Video Looking to Plant a Curse. Hey, you might want to check that your computer's got good antivirus software just in case some of that curse sort of leaks through the internet. That does happen sometimes. So keep that in mind as we roll this next clip. Maybe draw a little salt circle around where you're sitting just in case. Smudge your house with sage, I would advise. Now, this footage comes from a documentary, so it's not exactly the most real depiction of one of these creatures, but it's fun to watch. It's a documentary on the beast of native folklore and showcases a depiction or a dramatization of what a live sighting face-to-face with one could look like. It's pretty horrifying to see such a realistic depiction. I think you imagine these creatures and it's pretty scary, but then you see it like in a tableau like this and you realize just how scary it is. We see a bunch of livestock running in a flock and a shadow darting between them as if your eyes are playing tricks on you. Is this just another shadow of the night? Or is this an animal? Just your eyes? We then see the homeowner readying himself to defend against the particular attack. Now, something unnerving about the legend of these creatures is just how little there is said to be done against them. Some stories say that the way to fell one of these entities is by learning its name and shouting it against it. Now, some others say that traditional weapons have next to no use against one. Maybe you'll slow it down just a little bit, but that you need rituals and otherworldly magic to be able to actually stand a chance. And of course, there are some nihilistic stories that say once the creature has set its sights on you, well, it's kind of hopeless and there's not really anything you can do until your judgment comes. So the best advice for me, I would say, is to just never run into one at all, and if you even start to think you hear one, just book it out of Dodge.
Number 3. Security scared. Canadian security guards were terrified when they stumbled across an eerie camouflaged creature crawling towards them in the woods. The creature blended in with the darkened grass, hardly noticeable among the dense bush surrounding it. The workers decided to investigate the creature, going into the woods in an attempt to locate it. In a video, the being is recorded crawling through the grass towards the women who are standing outside of their car. The terrified women continuously question what the animal is, freaked out by the mysterious being. The women got back into their car and drove closer, hoping to catch a clear view of the creature so they could identify it. Though the women were able to get closer, the creature still did not become any more clear. It blended into the cleared path that it was on, lacking any defining features. The creature began to walk towards the women, who quickly and smartly decided to back away. They posted the video footage, and commenters immediately began to identify the creature as a skinwalker. Many were also worried about the safety of the women, warning them of the danger of approaching a skinwalker. One commented, "Skinwalker, do not whistle. Save yourself now, sister. Please listen." Whistling is known to attract skinwalkers, who often whistle back. Other commenters theorized that the creature could have been Bigfoot or a large wolf. The two women are fine and have not reported any later disturbances as a result of the experience. Number 2. Yenald Lushi is watching me. A grandchild writes about her experience with skinwalkers. Their grandmother was half Navajo and half Irish. The grandmother was also very superstitious. The writer explains that their grandmother was extremely superstitious and believed in paranormal occurrences. The writer recalls visiting their grandmother. They would spend time together doing normal family things. But the curtains were always completely drawn, and at times the grandmother would peek out through the curtains, pulling back only enough to see without fully opening them. When the family would ask the grandmother what she was doing, she would always reply with the same thing: "Yenald Lushi is watching me." The days continued in the same way, the grandmother always keeping the curtains drawn closed and peeking out every now and again. Nearing the end of the visit, the writer's younger brother was in the front garden planting flowers, having a good, calm time. Abruptly, their grandmother began to yell, "Get away from that creature, it's not safe." The writer, who was inside, assumed that their grandmother was talking about a snake or scorpion. They frantically ran outside without hesitation to see what was happening. Outside, on the side of the house, the grandma was clutching the brother and trembling in terror. Standing in the yard was a huge, black, Great Dane-sized creature that stared at the grandmother with soul-piercing intensity. The animal stared its yellow eyes at the grandmother and small child, before huffing and quickly leaving. The writer's mother kept asking what had happened, and the grandmother continually repeated, "The Yenald Lushi has found me." The grandma moved houses only a few weeks after that. The writer still recalls the story, which took place over a decade ago, with astounding clarity. It is unlikely that the grandmother was ever found by the Yenald Lushi again, and the writer has not reported any other incidents. Number 1. It had a dog's body, but with human hands and feet. This writer shares their story of staying with their grandmother and cousins during their adolescence. After a game of Truth or Dare, a heart-stopping and heartbreaking turn of events occurred. The grandmother's house was in a suburban, heavily forested area in Michigan. The neighbors are a short drive away from the road at the front of the house, but the back of the house led into a forest, filled only with man-made paths. Each of the houses was on a hill. The only part of them that was fully underground was the basement. The cousins were all young, and the writer was in the middle age range of the group. The cousins had created a fire pit in the back of the house. It was located in a small patch of open space, out of sight from any of the neighboring houses. They would frequently sit there, having fires and share scary stories. One night, after sharing the scary stories, the group decided to play a game of Truth or Dare. The writer's older cousin dared them to walk through the paths, which were darkening from the setting sun, for 10 minutes. The writer accepted, along with their younger cousin. The pair walked into the woods, hoping that the light left in the sky would be enough to allow them to see for the next 10 minutes. The pair tripped through the woods, squinting and following the paths. They walked for about 5 minutes, turning back when they could hardly see the fire. Upon turning, the pair froze in fear from the creature before them. In the middle of the path stood a large dog-like creature, hunched over with its front hands merely an inch from the ground. The creature had bright, almost glowing white eyes. It had a dog-like body, a human head, hands and feet. The pair stood, petrified, as though they were turned to stone, unable to move or scream. The creature dashed the opposite direction, towards the small river. The duo screamed and sprinted back to the house. The cousins all slept in a room with large glass sliding doors that overlooked the forest at the back of the house. In the morning, the writer skipped breakfast, as their cousins were outside playing. Once outside, they were met with their cousins running towards the house to get their grandma. In the distance, the writer could see the grandmother's 2 dogs in the yard, deceased, and their bodies had obviously been attacked. That night, they all went to bed early. In the middle of the night, the writer was woken by something hitting their head. They sat up to see all of their cousins sitting silently, staring at them. A younger cousin motioned towards the large windows. The writer cautiously turned their head to the sliding glass doors to see a, as they said, really messed up face pressed against the glass. The writer screamed, louder than they had thought was possible, causing the creature against the glass to bolt away. The grandmother called the police, who were unable to locate the creature, and has never stayed there in the night again. Number 5. The Grove. On a backcountry camping trip, Patrick was staying at a site he had frequented previously. During his stay, there was a coyote that would often be near, but never out in the open. Patrick explained that he could almost sense the presence of the coyote. He would be able to catch a glimpse of it out of the corner of his eyes or in his peripheral vision, but he never came face to face with the animal. On the last day, Patrick was packing his truck in preparation for heading home from his trip. He began to drive down the path. At the end of the first section, he noticed that the coyote was following behind his fast-moving truck. When Patrick turned onto the paved road, he was terrified to discover that the coyote was running next to him. Patrick sped up in an attempt to escape the creature, pushing to about 35 miles per hour. The creature continued to run beside the truck, only falling behind when Patrick sped up even more. In the rearview mirror, Patrick could see that the animal was now running on 2 legs, standing up, and wearing what looked to be buckskin pants. When he next looked, Patrick said he saw a man wearing coyote fur keeping up with his truck. The next time Patrick looked back, the creature was gone. Number 4. The Skinwalker by the River. In British Columbia on a cold and windy day, a student named Raj was expecting his day to carry on like usual. He never would have expected to be arriving at school choking back tears. His house is located across from a large river. Across the river was a small 1-car bridge surrounded by woods. He had to walk across the bridge every morning to get to school. This morning was very cold. The river that ran below the bridge was frozen over completely. The air was frigid and biting. As he approached the bridge, his eye was caught by a figure lurking at the edge of the bush. From a distance, he assumed it was a coyote, which he frequently saw in the area. But as he continued towards the bridge, he noticed the size of the creature. The creature began to stand taller, and it was around the size of a bear or a wolf. The creature seemed to glance at him. Raj walked even closer to the bridge and then stopped in his tracks. He could clearly see that the creature standing before him was not a coyote, wolf, or bear. It was standing tall, with its knees bent backwards as if its legs were inverted. The body was thin and frail, with delicate skin that showed the protruding ribs and spine. The bones looked as though even the slightest movement would cause them to break through the struggling skin of the creature. He stayed staring at the creature and took another step forward. Faster than the blink of an eye, the creature's head snapped up, its dark, lifeless eyes staring back at his. The mouth moved, before the creature let out an inhuman screech. With tears in his eyes, Raj watched as the creature then hunched down to all fours and darted across the frozen river, all within a split second. Raj ran across the bridge to the school, hearing twigs snapping behind him, as though he was being followed.
Back in February of this year, a wildlife camera snapped an eerie figure dubbed an elemental, with glowing eyes protruding from the dark of a forest. This haunting creature was picked up on a camera that was set up deep in the woods. But it wasn't meant to capture any sort of weird being of any sinister variety. It was meant to pick up deer tracks. Instead, the folks got this beast. So with glowing eyes and a hunched over appearance, the grim beast appears to have set off the movement tracker and offered up this really unsettling selfie, which then made its way to Facebook. It was specifically a group titled Ghosts of London, and some folks were like, yeah, this isn't a ghost, this is a whole lot more, and we've got problems. Now sure, well, what they consider elementals and ghosts might serve the same purpose to the Facebook group. This creature has more ties to the occult. And they're like, yeah, nope, this is definitely an S-Walker. Somebody was like, that, my friends, is an elemental, a being comprised of only the energies of the earth itself. And there was a lot of chiming in and being like, yep, nope, this is something eerie. This is something we need to pay attention to. The original poster wrote, so this was a camera set up in the woods, set up to take photos when it senses movement. Main purpose is to take photos of deer and other wildlife. And they said that there was no people that could be in the woods at that time, especially without the owners of the property knowing, and it had to be moving to set the camera off. So then we've got even more freaked out Facebook users being like, this thing has eyes that chill me. And another person was very much worried about the pairs of eyes behind the elemental. Some folks were like, maybe this is a W-worded being, which is a shape-shifting creature that can mimic the voices of people it comes into contact with, and the sounds of woodland creatures. Over here, we think it's an S-Walker. Back in 2018, this next crazy video went viral, claiming to show a 6-foot eerie faceless creature reportedly stalking a moose in the Canadian wilderness. And that's just terrifying. The video, which has been viewed more than 30,000 times, was posted by Audrey Tanguay Fréchette, who was unable to explain the footage. So they were filming a moose on a roadside in Quebec, and they said looking back at the video they saw a strange shape in the back left. Could somebody tell them what it was? Now it's unclear what was captured on film, but some commenters were like, hey, it's Gollum, you know, the character from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Somebody else was like, my precious, and also my bad impression, I'm so sorry folks. But you know what that line's from, Lord of the Rings. Now, even more people had fun with it. They're like, maybe it's a rake, a mythical creature that hunts animals without rhyme or reason. They were like, yeah, that looks like a rake type creature stalking the moose. It must be pretty tall too. Well, the creature appears to stand up on its hind legs, but it's not clear how tall it is. News outlets called it a 6-foot tall monstrosity, so you know what we think at this point. And finally for today, while this last spotting is kind of unknown in terms of what kind of cryptid it is, I really think it's some sort of shifter and possibly an S-Walker. This video was courtesy of user Valhu on TikTok, who opened their front door to a creature that almost looks like a deer, but it's missing some important body parts that you use to listen with, and other body parts are not in the right spot. So it's referenced as a not deer, but there's been arguments made online that believe not deer are actually just S-Walkers, but misclassified. These creatures, they kind of look similar to a newborn deer, but then they appear as adults because, well, the creature might be double jointed, they might have additional joints in their limbs, and also the eyes just aren't in the right spot for all of these creatures. They're supposed to be like on the side of the head, but they're more in like a predator spot, which means shifting. Now, they tend to pop up a lot in Tennessee, and this spotting though came from somewhere in Southern California. For starters today, a TikTok user driving around at night claimed to have captured the moment a pale creature leapt towards them through a patch of long grass and just came right at them. While a portion of the millions of viewers who watched the video claim the creature is a mythical S-Walker, other more skeptical viewers are like, maybe this is an attempt to fool people. So it's up to you, dear viewer. Help me decide in the comments whether this is real or not. The clip, uploaded by TikTok user It's Louis Vuitton, appears to be capturing a grassy area being lit up by a flashlight held by the person filming from the car. It sounds as though those occupying the car are scouring the area for animals, since we hear a voice say, I thought I'd seen a big buck or something. The voice continues, asking their companion, who is presumably driving, is that a buck? Which, by the way, if you want to see a moose on the road, no you don't. At this point, their companion's voice cuts in, shrieking, what is that? The camera then focuses on a pale, human-like creature, which appears to be really coming through the grass towards the vehicle. The original narrator's voice also sounds panicked, saying, dude, what is that? So at this point, the camera swerves down and the clip abruptly ends. The TikTok user did not say what or who they thought the creepy looking figure could be. The video was just titled, Scary, accompanied by a shocked emoji. The video had proven popular on TikTok, garnering like 900,000 likes, 6 million views, got a lot of traction. Now, a lot of folks weighed in on what they thought it could be, according to the Daily Star. Some folks were like, yeah, this is definitely an S-Walker, which if you don't know, that's a mythical creature from indigenous legend, said to roam around the wilderness at night. It's a kind of witch and has the ability to transform into a variety of animals. Somebody commented, S-Walker, rake, or pale man. And somebody else was like, definitely S-Walker or winged spirit. They're dangerous. A third person was like, that's an S-Walker if I ever saw one. Alrighty folks, your time to shine. Let me know in the comments if you haven't already. Is this an S-Walker? So next up we have a video that shows that there's definitely something out there. Definitely some sort of weird creature. Could be a fairy tale monster. Could be an S-Walker. And it kind of changed a lot of folks' concept of a lot of things, and for them it was definitive proof that there's dogs with extraordinary abilities that aren't myths and are probably related to the legends. The video was supposedly recorded in Chile and shared by the Twitter, UFO Logo Julio, a page famous for its paranormal content. The video shows what appears to be a stray dog walking near a house at night, but in a matter of seconds and before our eyes, the animal, somehow, begins to slowly transform into a person. So as expected, public opinion has been divided. Somebody's like, hey, the video's edited, maybe this is AI. And everybody else is like, no, like, creatures exist, this is probably pretty real. S-Walker stories are commonly found in indigenous culture, which is prevalent in a lot of areas in the southwestern United States. And these creatures, which keep a lot of folks awake at night, are associated with witchcraft. You can include coyotes, other creatures associated with death or the announcement of evil, under this umbrella. People who want to become these evil creatures are actually capable of harming their own families to do so. Not only can S-Walkers transform, but they can also take control of animals and even people, which makes more sense to see why you might see the occasional goat or coyote walking on two legs. Now, if you're wondering by now, hey Alexa, why aren't you saying the name of the creatures in full? Well, it's because A, I'm not indigenous, and B, it's an overall forbidden thing to talk about them. Especially at night, seeing as a lot of folks consider that a way of attracting these creatures, and I don't need any more bad mojo in my life. Legend has it that the worst thing you can do if you see an S-Walker is to follow the creature in question, because they can manipulate you into taking you to your inner circle of people, and then it's the end for you. The only way to allegedly get rid of one, if they're already haunting you, say their name and see what happens, and just do your best, folks. Time to venture outside of Ontario, heck outside of Canada, for this sighting from Maine. Ian Harris wants to make it clear that throughout his youth and adulthood, he's had several encounters with entities and energies that are not of this realm. At least not as far as science and history is concerned. Poor guy is just a magnet for the quote-unquote unknown. Specifically speaking, over the last few years, he's had several terrifying experiences, which includes being stalked while taking late night walks around Turner, Maine. Sometimes he's overcome with a sense of fear that's animalistic, and an innate sense of paranoia consumes him, as if something is watching from the woods and that he needs to get to safety fast. On other occasions, he's had something, actually quite aggressively, follow alongside him, chasing him away from certain areas while whispering in a low, human-like tone. It sounds like human footsteps crunching across tree branches, leaves but so much larger, heavier than any human can step. This thing can also hurl itself from treetop to treetop, and the power of it is so great that it has actually knocked down trees. Full-sized ones, as it leaps. Besides those encounters, he's visually seen something he can only describe as an antlered spirit. It was either comfortable enough with Ian's energy to reveal itself, or something else altogether. Maybe it wanted to eat him, maybe it wanted to possess him, maybe it just wanted to talk to him. He doesn't really know because he didn't stick around long enough to find out. I don't blame him. The energy of this thing, the way it looked, was just so offensive, so terrifying, that Ian only remained long enough to visualize what he instinctively knew was coming through the woods and was about to show itself to him. Ian was just frozen while he waited for this thing to come out of the woods. Looking back, he's not sure if it was curiosity or the power of the creature itself. So he locked eyes with this thing, and when he did, it was as if he was suddenly watching himself from its perspective. Horrified, he tore himself away and ran inside, locking the front door, hurrying to his bedroom before screaming for his housemate. Ian refused to even step out of his bedroom for the entire night, and was so terrified that he was shaking for hours and did not sleep. Some definite details he can remember of this creature was that its face was sunken in and its head was very large in size. Where its eyes should have been were craters of black, and in the middle, glowing orbs that were very bright and flame-like. Now this thing was all fours, but it definitely could have walked on two legs if it wanted to. The creature was also very, very thin, and its chest was very near skeletal, and the stomach was caved in as if it hadn't eaten in like 100 years. Its arms and legs were both very long, and they were insanely muscled and massive. Honestly, its arms and legs were the only part of the creature's anatomy that had any mass about it. The creature itself though was huge, possibly around 10 feet tall, and weighing in anywhere between 500 to 600 pounds. It also seemingly had fur covering some parts of its body, and along the tops of its arms, back, and thighs, but like, it also seemed kind of scarce at the same time. Another thing Ian remembered was the mouth. This thing was smiling at him. Its teeth were razor sharp and long, the size of its smile, and teeth took up most of its face, and where a nose would have been, there were just nostrils, almost like a skull. Matches up with a lot of descriptions of the devourer. Just saying. Back to Canada we go with this next sighting, but over in Newfoundland this time. So Ed Davis lives on the northern east coast of Newfoundland here in Canada. There's an area extremely deep in the woods, about 40 minutes away from where he lives, that's so deep in the forest that you don't really see anything else, just lots of trees. There's a few smaller stores out that way, but nothing really noteworthy. But if you walk deep into the woods, there's a path that cars can't drive through, where a burnt up abandoned slaughterhouse is. Now this is where I mentioned that Ed had been warned by a visiting Algonquin friend not to venture into the woods because they had a reputation for being cursed, and that this friend was like, I'm never going there myself. But over one weekend, Ed and some other white buddies were bored and they were like, let's go check it out, we're in the area. And hey, nothing happened. They just took some pictures, observed that the area was a bit eerie. The days after they went to that place though, well, they'd been having bad and unexplainable events just occur randomly out of nowhere. I'm not shocked, and neither should anybody else be. So the next week, Ed and his buddies were like, hey, let's do this again. They got some other friends as well and drove back out there just to show them around, to explore more and get better pictures. And when the group got there, they heard what they assumed was the wind howling. But the longer it went on, they realized the pattern didn't match up with the wind. It didn't make any sense for it to be howling like that, sounding almost as if someone was whistling at the group to get their attention. Now when the group was in one of these secondary buildings, a friend pointed out that it looked like something was running around outside the main building. And he was right. It looked like something very quickly moved across the front side of the building, and the sound was back, but louder. So the group went outside, crawled through a section of the gate to get to the main building, and as soon as they made it through, they heard a loud swinging sound, almost like a rusty door was slowly being opened and closed. So Ed and another friend were extremely put off by the sound, and they wanted to go back to the car. But the others said they wanted to go into the main building. So as the group was walking up to the front of said building, a friend jokingly made a remark about them splitting up, which, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. As he said it, the group heard a series of loud banging noises, like something was running across the metal floor of the building towards the door. So the group made it the heck out of there and ran back towards the trail. As they were running back towards the car, which wasn't exactly a short walk, they shined their lights back towards the buildings. And as the group looked back, they definitely saw what appeared to be some completely solid white bipedal humanoid running down the trail. They got back in the car, drove back to town as quickly as possible, and for everybody's sakes, I hope they never go back. And we're gonna end today with a sighting from Minnesota. Matt Daniels and his buddies had found the perfect set of hills to go skiing on one warm and wet day back in 1972, but sadly the day they found the location, the weather wasn't ideal, so they vowed to return another day. Luckily for the guys, later in the week, that perfect weather had arrived. They built some runs into the snow, and when Matt was at the top of the hill, he suddenly became aware of a black spruce tree that was about 40 feet from him. He couldn't quite figure it out at first, just that something looked kind of off. And just as he jumped down on his sled, he looked back again and started questioning what he was seeing. Black spruce only has one trunk, not three. And those two extra trunks have fur on them. Well, hair. Really long hair. Long gray hair. What's got long gray hair? Is there some kind of snow pants with long hair or something? He's like, okay, come on. Irrational thoughts aside, somebody must be pranking me. So he looked up, he's like, okay, where's the adult, And no adults, just pine branches. What he saw matched a lot of descriptions we've already mentioned today about what the flesh eaters of the forest tend to look like. And that scared Matt so bad that he ran home and vowed to never explore those hills ever again. So back in 2010, Indigenous elders in northwestern Ontario were calling a dead creature that washed up on the shores of their remote community a bad omen of things to come. And nobody seemed to be able to identify the waterlogged carcass from photos. Not that there was a lack of opinion on the matter. The photos went viral after an Oji Cree community south of Hudson Bay released pictures of the rat-like creature that a dog had sniffed out from a local creek. Pictures posted to the website of the Big Trout Lake community showed a long and skinny creature with brown fur and a bald, pale face. The creature was about a foot long, according to the official community website, and was found when two nurses were hiking near a local creek. Their dog Sam saw something in the water and dragged the creature out. Daryl Senawap, a council member for Big Trout Lake, said he couldn't confirm stories by some community members, including his great-uncle, about sightings of a strange animal roaming swampy areas and feeding on beavers. And he was like, okay, keep in mind, those stories were from about 60 years ago. He hadn't seen the creature himself, nor had his grandfather or most of the community. But he did say that this creature's appearance was being interpreted by some elders as a bad omen for the community. The community website stated that nobody knew what it was, but their ancestors used to call it the Ugly One. Rarely seen, but when seen, it's a bad omen. Something bad will happen according to the ancestors. Now, in Indigenous communities, they don't like to say the name of the creature that gives it power. Senawap said that one of the two nurses who aren't from the area described a foul odor emanating from the creature's carcass. The pair did not attempt to move the creature because they believed it was an animal common to the area, but they eventually realized that they had taken photos of an unfamiliar, possibly rare specimen. But when they returned to the rocky shoreline, it was gone, and their photos are the only evidence left of this mystery creature. Now, online commenters have suggested that the mystery creature could either be a waterlogged bear cub, an otter, a beaver, muskrat, possum, or any other rodent-like animal that may have been diseased or misshapen by decomposition. The experts know better though, and are pretty sure this was a flesh eater of the forest. We're not leaving Northern Ontario for this next reported sighting yet, just traveling over to Kenora. Look, I grew up in Northeastern Ontario, and there are a lot of Indigenous reserves up north, and they tend to know what's fact and what's fiction when it comes to this specific knowledge. A source who prefers to remain anonymous mentioned that she lived in a rural area, and her house was about 100 meters from a small stream that splits the small wooded lot in half. She was there one day, and all of a sudden she felt cold and uncomfortable, like she was being watched. She also became increasingly paranoid that somebody or something was out there with her, and decided to head inside since the sun was settling. Our narrator started walking towards her house, and as she approached the edge of the woods, she turned around and briefly saw a large creature about 80 yards from her, standing across the stream. It then proceeded to take a step towards the woman, who panicked and ran out of those woods in about 5 seconds. She's described it as being the most she's ever been scared, and the most adrenaline that she's ever felt running through her. In the brief period of time that she saw this thing, she could tell that it was pale white, tall, and humanoid. It's believed by Indigenous folks in her area that an antlered spirit will call to you for help like a human in order to lure people towards it. And what do you know? Our gal heard what sounded like a young girl calling out for help in those woods. So fast forward about a year later, after a heavy snowfall, she once again heard the calls of a girl coming from the woods. She looks out the window, doesn't see a thing. That night, the sounds continued off and on all night. Now the poor gal lives alone, but there is a couple that lived about a kilometer from her, and she ventured over to them a few days later to be like, hey, any advice? She asked them if they'd heard any sounds, and their eyes were like, aye. They were relieved that they weren't the only ones imagining the sounds. The husband told our witness that he saw a tall, pale white humanoid walking through the woods behind their house while he was out chopping wood. So she asked him what he thought it was, and he said it wasn't sure, but he remembered that his father would talk about the legend of the flesh eaters of the forest when he was a boy, and everything they know about this creature matched up with what was currently going on.
Number 3. Wendigo as a metaphor. Beyond viewing the Wendigo as a literal monster or as a boogeyman created to prevent people from eating each other in desperate times, some people view the Wendigo as a metaphor for greed and its all-consuming nature, helping to reinforce the communal values that let members of a tribe live well together in their environments. Interestingly, native scholars have used this metaphor in modern contexts to great effect. For example, in his 1978 book Columbus and Other Cannibals, The Wendigo Disease of Exploitation, Imperialism, and Terrorism, Dr. Jack D. Forbes uses the Wendigo as a metaphor for the attitudes and behaviors of domination and exploitation enacted on his people. As he writes, I have come to the conclusion that imperialism and exploitation are forms of cannibalism, and in fact, are precisely those forms of it which are most diabolical or evil, going on to say that the treatment of minorities clearly attests to the fact that, quote, the wealthy and exploitative literally consume the lives of those they exploit. This really shows how effective this legend is as a metaphor for greed, working just as well in a tribal setting to prevent people from hoarding what little food was available, as it does in a modern setting where imperialism's need to make others suffer for the benefit of a ruling class is explored. So, from a metaphorical standpoint, the Wendigo is undeniably real. We just call it capitalism. Number 2. Wendigo psychosis. Whether the Wendigo is real or not, there are documented examples of people going mad and engaging in Wendigo-like behavior. People who crave a more scientific explanation coined the term Wendigo psychosis to explain this behavior. The term is controversial, but has been applied to instances in the past as a means of explanation. For example, in the 1661 Jesuit Relations, which were published progress reports by Jesuit missionaries, reported about an incident that was believed to be the result of Wendigo possession, but has later been labeled as Wendigo psychosis. Here is the translated quote. What caused us greater concern was the news that met us upon entering the lake, namely, that the men deputed by our conductor for the purpose of summoning the nations to the North Sea and assigning them a rendezvous, were there to await our coming, had met their death the previous winter in a very strange manner. Those poor men, according to the report given to us, were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. They were afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease, which causes them a more than canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves, and devour them voraciously, without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey, and the more they consumed, the more greedily they ate. This ailment attacked our deputies, and as death is the sole remedy among these simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness. Another strange case was a Plains Cree trapper named Swift Runner in Alberta, who was starving with his family in 1879 when his oldest son died. He consumed him, but went on to end the lives of and eat his 6 remaining family members. This was attributed to Wendigo psychosis due to the fact that he was only 25 miles away from a Hudson's Bay Company post, which had emergency food supplies, showing that his actions were not a last-ditch effort to avoid starvation, but a horrific and crazed act. This real behavior reinforced the belief in the Wendigo. But I promised I would tie this all back to the government, and I will. The Canadian government. Number 1. Real Wendigo hunters. This entry focuses more on the belief that the Wendigo is a spirit who possesses people rather than causes them to turn into a giant monster. This belief has caused a few situations where people attributed violent acts to possession by the Wendigo spirit, or in other cases took the lives of people thinking that they were possessed and that their death was the only way to prevent the dangers of the Wendigo from taking innocent lives. An infamous case was the story of Jack Fiddler, the chief and shaman of the Sucker Dudum among the Anishinaabe in the northwest Ontario. He was renowned among his people for his ability to defeat Wendigos, having claimed to have defeated 14 of them during his life. He said that some of them had been sent by enemy shamans and some were afflicted members of his own band. In these cases, many of the afflicted's family members, or oftentimes the afflicted themselves, would request that Fiddler euthanize them according to their people's rites before they turned Wendigo. Fiddler resisted efforts to have his people convert to Christianity, making them some of the only indigenous people left in North America who were living traditionally with very little government interference in their legal or religious matters. In 1907, 2 members of the Northwest Mounted Police heard about Jack Fiddler and his Wendigo fighting and decided that this was a perfect opportunity to introduce Canadian law to the North. They arrested Jack and his brother Joe for murder, keeping them in captivity while awaiting trial. Canadian newspapers picked up and sensationalized the story, saying that it involved devil worship, and people across the country demanded a conviction, while the police investigating the issue viewed it as an opportunity for fame and advancement. Jack Fiddler escaped and took his own life, and his brother was charged despite testimony showing that the deaths had been euthanization of very ill people in an effort to protect their tribe, and that they were ignorant of Canadian law. He was sentenced to death, although further appeals secured his release. Unfortunately, the release order came 3 days after he had died. Without their leaders, Jack's people were forced to accept government rule and signed Treaty No. 5. Oddly enough, the government has not been very open about the fact that they sentenced 2 men to death in an effort to assert their power and dominance, and to bring fame and notoriety to their agents. See, I told you I'd bring it back to the government. Number 5. The literal legend. The Wendigo story has some variation between tribes, but most of the general details are the same. My research has shown that some tribes believe that the very first Wendigo was a warrior who made a deal with an evil spirit in exchange for the skills, strength, and stature to defeat his foes and save his tribe. He was transformed into the Wendigo, and after the battle was banished by his people. Wendigo is a malevolent spirit who possesses people, with some versions of the tale having this be a result of a person's greed, and others having a more disturbing cause. A common version of the legend is that when people are caught in times of famine or in extreme survival situations, they sometimes have to resort to eating human flesh in order to survive. This resulted in them transforming into a Wendigo, who would have an intense craving for human flesh that could never be satiated, no matter how much they consumed. Some tribes describe the Wendigo as a creature who grows with every person they eat so that they can never be full, making them simultaneously starving and gluttonous. In his book The Manitus, The Spiritual World of the Ojibwe, First Nations teacher and scholar Basil H. Johnston gives the following physical description of the creature. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean and suffering from the suppuration of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. Wendigo's level of cunning in speech vary from version to version, with some tales having him imitate the voice of a loved one in order to coax their victims closer. A particularly disturbing folk story that was part of the compilation of tales assembled by a scholar named Lottie Marsden in Ojibwe Myths and Tales Archaeological Report of the Canadian Institute goes as follows. One time long ago, a big Wendigo stole a boy. But the boy was too thin, so the Wendigo didn't eat him up right away. But he traveled with the boy, waiting for him to get fat. The Wendigo had a knife and he'd cut the boy on the hand to see if he was fat enough to eat. But the boy didn't get fat. They traveled too much. One day they came to a village and the Wendigo sent the boy to the village to get some things for him to eat. He just gave the boy so much time to go there and back. The boy told the tribe that the Wendigo was near them, and showed them his hand where the Wendigo cut him to see if he was fat enough to eat. They heard the Wendigo calling the boy. He said to the boy, "Hurry up, don't tell lies to those people." The tribe went to where the Wendigo was and cut off his legs. They went back again to see if he was dead. He wasn't. He was eating the marrow from inside of the bones of his legs that were cut off. The tribe asked the Wendigo if there was any fat on them. He said, "You bet there is. I've eaten lots of you. No wonder they are so fat." Then they killed him and cut him to pieces. This was the end of this giant Wendigo. Number 4. The purpose of the legend. Whether the native people believe in the Wendigo as a literal creature or merely as a legend depends entirely on the individual's beliefs and who you ask, and it's frankly really not for me to say. There are certainly a significant number of believers who report sightings, but for the purpose of this entry on the list, let's look at the Wendigo from the perspective that it's a folk legend that was created and passed down for a purpose beyond "look out, snow monster!" Many scholars believe that the Wendigo was created as a cautionary tale and a deterrent. As any Canadian will tell you, the winters here can be long and brutal. This would result in hunting parties being trapped in storms and there being extreme food shortages. In such extreme survival situations, it would not be uncommon for people in their desperation to consider eating members of their community in a last-ditch effort to survive. This was considered extremely taboo, obviously, and the prevailing idea was that in these situations it was the proper response to face famine with resignation and a readiness for death. This lends credence to the idea that the legend was created as a deterrent and a cautionary tale to prevent members of the tribe from eating each other during the long brutal winters, telling them that indulging in the consumption of human flesh would transform them into a hideous and ravenous monster who would be hungry forever. Some have suggested that the Wendigo's appearance is a reference to the harsh elements of the winter, with their emaciation being reminiscent of the hunger winter caused and their tattered and bloody lips being reminiscent of the enduring ravages of frostbite. If the tribe believed that someone could also be transformed into a Wendigo due to greed, what better way to deter it than to tell the greedy party to shape up so that they could avoid turning into a Wendigo? The taboo against Wendigo-like actions were so strong that during times of famine, tribes, such as the Assiniboine, the Cree, and the Ojibwe, would reinforce the supposed dangers with a ceremony known as Wendigo Kan Zim Owen, where people would wear masks and dance backwards around a drum. Although the Wendigo works well as a deterrent to man-eating, it is also used in a less literal way that is essential to keep in mind to understand the deeper meaning of the legend.
Number 3 on this list is the toy rocking horse. This story doesn't even make any sense at all. It's just next levels of crazy. CVLT Nation says, my uncle is Mexican and Native American. This happened in the Mojave Desert in Southern California. He was driving around with his girlfriend late at night and they saw something that looked like a huge black dog on the side of the road. He slowed down and the dog began crossing the road. Instead of walking like a normal dog would, this thing moved like a toy rocking horse. He said it stopped in the middle of the road and stared right at them and its eyes had a red glow. My uncle is the most badass person I know and it scared the crap out of him. So I'm honestly trying to figure out how the heck it moved like a toy rocking horse. That kind of doesn't make sense, you know? How would it get anywhere if it just kept rocking back and forth? I don't really understand if I'm being honest, but apparently that's what went down. Which would definitely be enough to scare the bejesus out of me and never go back to the Mojave Desert again. Number 2 on this list is Yenald Lushi. A terrifying tale where a young boy was almost taken far too soon. CVLT Nation says, one year when I was in grade school, we went to visit her. Most of the visits were pretty uneventful, typical boring old people stuff, except she always kept her curtains drawn shut and would always peek out the window, and when someone asked what she was doing, she would simply reply, Yenald Lushi is watching me. This went on for nearly the entire visit until a few days before we were due to leave. My grandma and my baby brother were in the front yard that evening planting flowers when all of a sudden my grandmother starts shouting, "Get away from that creature. It's not safe." Of course, being in Nevada, we all assumed that my brother had found a scorpion or a rattlesnake, so we all run inside to see my grandmother clutching my little brother and shaking in terror against the side of the house. Standing out in the yard was a large, black, Great Dane-sized dog. It was staring at my grandmother with an intensity I'd never seen before. It looked up at us, gave a little huff, and bounded off. I don't remember if it moved unusually fast or not, but do remember it had really deep yellow eyes. When my mother asked my grandmother what had happened, she kept repeating, "The Yenald Lushi has found me." She moved a couple weeks after that. So I imagine that the Yenald Lushi is a special skinwalker that apparently this grandmother knew about. I obviously don't know all the old tales and don't have the same wisdom that she has, but this creature sounds especially bad. as if there was some history between it and the grandmother and it was coming to exact revenge. Very lucky that the young boy was able to make it out of there alive. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Ruins of Inquisition. Bit of a creepy name there already, guys. Kind of sounds like a mission in Skyrim or something like that, and I guess based on what happens, it could be. 5 years ago, some friends went out to some ruins in New Mexico. These ruins were critical during the actual Inquisition, hence the name. Well, once they got there, one of the friends started playing on the flute that they brought. They were only 30 seconds into playing the thing when a blood-curdling scream filled the air. It was so loud it almost burst the eardrums off of these guys. Then as the scream was happening, a creature was jumping and running across the tops of the ruins. It was moving so fast that they couldn't even really make out what it was. They thought it was an animal of some type though, but obviously nothing natural. The guys noped on out of there as fast as possible and drove 6 hours in the other direction. What's even crazier though is that when they got to their next destination, which was a campsite, and after they set up their campsite, they came face to face with what they thought was the creature from the ruins. 7 to 10 feet tall, a werewolf human-like creature was staring directly at the guys from the deep darkness. They then ran as fast as they could and noped the hell out of that place too. This time they all went home and just prayed that they weren't followed. But crazy, absolutely crazy to think that they were tracked and followed 6 hours. Only creature that could have done that, in my opinion, is the Skinwalker. Number 5 on this list is the human animal. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. The story that we're dealing with here is of a creature that wasn't quite human, but it also wasn't quite animal either. CVLT Nation says, in July 2004 near Gallup, New Mexico, I had my first and only encounter with a Skinwalker. Before this, I used to say, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, I'm a believer now. What I saw was not full human nor full animal. I was moving and had just completed the cleaning and was with my 10-year-old son. We had called it a night and were headed to our new place. As we walked out the front door, I saw a figure move from behind my neighbor's car to a nearby tree that stood between our apartments. It didn't have red glowing eyes, snarling teeth, or a rotten smell. It did move quickly, but not quick enough to avoid the light from a nearby light post and the porch lights. It didn't look at me or come toward me. It moved as if trying to avoid being seen. I was within 15 feet of it, but I did not look back to fully inspect it. What I saw was a wolf-like animal that sort of resembled the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, just not cartoonish. It had brown fur that completely covered it. It wasn't a pelt, it was a very large wolf. It didn't have any human traits except that it walked on its hind legs. It cowered behind the tree as we got into our vehicle. Now let's try to come up with a logical explanation before we buy into the Skinwalker theory, just to rule things out. Could this have been a bear? Well, maybe, but I kind of doubt it considering our friend here refers to it as a wolf-like creature several times. So he definitely didn't get any bear-like qualities from it, okay? So it's not a bear, well, what about being an actual wolf? I mean, this is probably the most possible, except it literally walked on its hind legs. Wolves have been known to get up on their hind legs for a second or two, maybe just to stand on them for a moment, but they don't specifically walk on them. That's not something that happens, guys. This wasn't a wolf and it wasn't a bear, and it also wasn't a human either. He says it himself. The only really true human characteristics is the fact that it did walk on its hind legs. So it's not a wolf, it's not a bear, it's not a human. What the hell is it? Well, now we're starting to get into Skinwalker territory. I can't really think of any other animal that would have the things he described this one had, other than maybe a Skinwalker. Very lucky that the creature didn't attack and he made it out alive. Number 4 on this list is the Grove. So this is a story told by the friend of the person it happened to. CVLT Nation says, I've heard a lot about coyotes and skinwalkers and had a weird experience or two with coyotes. Creepiest was walking up to my sleeping bag being surrounded in paw prints without even hearing them during the night. But never anything paranormal, so to speak. Patrick's story, however, kept me from going back to my favorite backcountry secret stash. He was leaving the area one morning, had been camping there a couple days, and said there was a coyote that always seemed to be close by, like in his peripheral vision, but never overt. He loaded up his truck and started to drive down the wash out to the fire road. At the end of the wash, he could see the coyote following him. When he pulled onto the road, it was running next to him. Now he was freaked out, so he sped up. He said he was going 35 or so, and it was running along beside him. Definitely not possible. When he looked back, the coyote was running on 2 legs and was wearing what Patrick said looked like buckskin pants. An instant later, it was a person wearing a coyote fur keeping pace with his truck. When he looked again, it was gone. We never went back to the grove after that. Dude, that sounds like something directly out of a fever dream. It was running alongside your car for one, then it was wearing pants, then it was a person wearing pants, and then it was gone? Like literally full on walking nightmare right there, guys. Also, what is it with these skinwalkers and chasing down cars? We had a few stories in the first part about that as well. I guess they do really just like to run fast.
Puzzling pictures show a strange unidentified creature roaming through a Texas zoo, which left city officials kind of dumbfounded. The mysterious night creature was spotted on a security camera at the Amarillo Zoo on May 21st of 2022 at around 1:30 in the morning. Not witching hour, but pretty dang close. A still photo released by the zoo showed a lengthy creature standing on what appeared to be 2 legs outside the facility's fence. Was it a person with a strange hat who likes to walk at night? A large coyote on its hind legs? A chupacabra? It's a mystery for those folks to solve. This was a statement the city said on their website. The zoo called it a UAO, unidentified Amarillo object. But the city was like, hey, maybe the public could help us out. They wanted to let the community have some fun with it. This was a statement from the director of Parks and Recreation. It's important to note that the entity was outside the zoo. There were no signs of attempted entry into the zoo. No animals or individuals were harmed. There was no signs of criminal activity, but it's definitely a strange and interesting image. So that director of Parks and Recreation was like, maybe locals can help us solve our mystery. Looking at the weird creature, it doesn't look like a typical horned beast, but I think there's something worth mentioning about this cryptid caught on tape. And back in 2010, Indigenous elders in northwestern Ontario were calling a dead creature that washed up on the shores of their remote community a bad omen of things to come. And nobody seemed to be able to identify the waterlogged carcass from photos. Not that there was a lack of opinion on the matter. The photos went viral after an Oji Cree community south of Hudson Bay released pictures of the rat-like creature that a dog sniffed out from a local creek. Pictures posted to the website of the Big Trout Lake community showed a long and skinny creature with brown fur and a bald, pale face. The animal was about 1 foot long, according to the official community website, and the creature was found when 2 nurses were hiking near a local creek. Their dog Sam saw something in the water, dragged it out. Daryl Senawap, a council member for the Big Trout Lake, said he couldn't confirm stories by some community members, including his great uncle, about sightings of a strange animal roaming swampy areas and feeding on beavers. Now, keep in mind, those stories that he had been told his entire life were from like 60 years ago. But he did tell CTV News Channel that he's never seen the creature himself, neither has his grandfather, most of the community, but this creature in particular, this new thing with the appearance, it has been interpreted by some elders as a bad omen for the community. The community website states, no one knows what it is, but our ancestors used to call it the ugly one. Rarely seen, but when seen, it's a bad omen. Something bad will happen according to our ancestors. One of the 2 nurses, who aren't from the area, described a very foul odor emanating from the creature's carcass. The pair didn't attempt to move it. They were like, maybe it's an animal common to the area. They didn't know everything. Eventually they realized they had taken photos of an unfamiliar, possibly very rare creature. But when they returned to the rocky shoreline, it was gone. And their photos are the only evidence left of the mystery creature. Online commenters have suggested the mystery creature could either be a waterlogged bear cub, an otter, a beaver, a muskrat, a possum, any other rodent-like animal that may have been diseased or misshapen by decomposition. The experts know better. They're pretty sure this was a flesh eater of the forest.